Two men who are part of a right-wing extremist group have been arrested and are facing federal charges in connection to the murder of a federal officer. So this tragic story starts on May 29th when a protective security officer named David Patrick Underwood was gunned down in Oakland by a man named Stephen Carrillo, who's part of the so-called Boogaloo Boys. And look, I'm going to be honest with you. The first time I heard about this group, I didn't take it seriously. And I learned that Boogaloo and the ridiculous name of this extremist group is on purpose, so people don't take it seriously. But unfortunately, there are members of this extremist group who have used the Black Lives Matter protests as a cover to carry out acts of extreme violence, to murder officers. And in this case, there was the federal officer who was shot and killed. And in the second case, there was yet another cop who was shot. And so I'm going to go to this video where a CNN reporter explains in detail how this case developed, and then I'll give you some more details. Let's take a look.
As the Black Lives Matter protests were taking place and law enforcement was trying to keep people safe during these protests, these two men were in communication that they were not connected to these protests at all, but they were going to use it as a cover to scope out and kill law enforcement. So on May 29th, they drove to the Oakland federal courthouse, the federal building. They staked out two law enforcement officers who were outside the federal building. One of them was Pat Underwood, and then in the drive-by shooting, murdered Underwood. Then there was a call from the public, ask for help from law enforcement to the public to look for the getaway vehicle, in the vehicle that was used in the drive-by shooting, a van. Well, the public then responded, and law enforcement on June 6th was brought to Carrillo's house, and it was there that he also then attacked the sheriff's deputies who were responding, killing Sergeant Damon Gutzwiller.
So there are both federal charges and state charges in connection to what Carrillo did. Federal prosecutors on Tuesday charged Carrillo with murder and attempted murder and leveled aiding and abetting charges against Robert Alvin Justice Jr., who has admitted to serving as the getaway driver in the courthouse ambush that happened. In addition to those federal charges, by the way, Carrillo faces a murder charge in the slaying of Santa Cruz County Sheriff Sergeant Damon Gutzwiller, as was mentioned toward the end of that video. So I'll give you more details about what this group is about, but these two people had communication. They had an online exchange where they made it clear that they saw the Black Lives Matter movement as an opportunity, as a way to, like, I guess, camouflage themselves to carry out these acts of violence. And then Black Lives Matter protesters would be blamed for it, of course. Now, luckily, there was enough of an investigation to figure out that this is actually this was carried out by right-wing extremists. But it's just, I'm happy they're in custody, but that ideology still exists. These are anti-government, extreme right-wing individuals.
Yeah, and apparently so committed to this idea that the shooter apparently scrawled catchphrases of the Boogaloo Movement in his own blood after being shot. Yeah, and this is only, exactly what we said would happen initially. I mean, I assumed that they would try to kill protesters, and there are other right-wingers that are doing that. This one decided to attack cops, and presumably to get the cops to then harshly attack the protesters, which the cops apparently didn't need any stimulus to do. They did it on their own. And this is what we predicted. And probably equally as easy to predict is that the right wing, which was really interested in this case, stopped talking about it the second they found out that this guy was involved in the Boogaloo Movement. And you had tweets from Charlie Kirk about, like, did his life not matter too? With a little thinking face. Has no update. Hasn't said anything since we found out. Not interested. They're on something else. They don't care about violence. They care about blaming it on Antifa, which has oddly been absent for weeks and weeks and weeks now. It seems mostly like right-wingers, the KKK, and militia members that are shooting people and trying to run them down all over the country.
Well, let me give you a little more information about this Boogaloo group. So they have one main uniting theme behind their so-called movement. It's the belief in and support for a civil war against a tyrannical government. Beyond that, the Boogaloo ideology is flexible. They like to dress up in Hawaiian shirts because when they go to, like, for instance, Black Lives Matter protests, they consider it like going to the party because they see it as an opportunity to carry out the violence that they want to carry out. Many of those who claim an allegiance to the far-right movement, which is made up largely of young white men, frequently carry rifles and espouse a need to defend the Second Amendment. According to the Anti-Defamation League, some Boogaloo adherents oppose government overreach and advance libertarian ideas embraced by militias and gun rights groups. Others openly spread white supremacist rhetoric and encourage a race war. So, I mean, look, we talked about that anti-government militia in New Mexico. One of those members opened fire against protesters, and the protester remains in the hospital in critical condition. This is an ongoing problem. This isn't something that sprung up out of nowhere, by the way. Like, there have been issues with right-wing extremism in this country for a long time now. And I remember in 2009, under the Obama administration, there was a tremendous amount of pressure to disband a specific group of investigators within the Department of Homeland Security who were tasked with investigating homegrown right-wing extremists. Conservative politicians didn't like it. They fought the Obama administration on it, and that group did disband. And there are consequences to that, and we're unfortunately dealing with it today. All right.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.